I'm here with Dr. David Simon, world-renowned health, mind, body physician, and also the doctor who runs Deepak Chopra Center. I'm going to ask him some of our signature questions about change and transformation. So David, what is the belief that you go to in times of change and transition in your own life?
I think it's the recognition that everything is always changing. And if we can keep breathing through it, we'll see that something that may look challenging at one phase is almost always incubating something magnificent to come from it. So even though I may be struggling or suffering with it, I hold on to that belief that something good is going to come from this.
You're what we call a fellow change optimist. What is the hardest change that you've ever had to get through?
Actually, when I shifted my entire professional career, everything in my life shifted. So I was chief of staff of a hospital. I had a family at that time. I was a practicing neurologist with a very busy practice. And then Deepak and I decided to create the Chopra Center. And everything in my life shifted. And it was like being caught up in a tidal wave. I wasn't really sure where it was going to land me. And I really didn't have a choice at that time except to just keep my head above water. But I learned a tremendous amount about letting go. Sometimes you let go and sometimes it's taken away. But in any case, what's core to your being ends up persisting and surviving and ultimately giving rise to some new incarnation.
Tell us a bit about a couple of the best changes that you have initiated, you have actually made, as opposed to life has sort of taken you on that journey.
I'm actually in a good change right now, which is despite the fact that at various times of my life I've been a pure vegan and other times almost always a vegetarian, I have this inherited cholesterol issue. So recently I went for a life insurance examination and they told me that my cholesterol was still high. And so I've decided that right now I am on the strictest, purest diet that I've been on since probably high school. And I realized that all the things that I kind of just gently became addicted to, you know, sweets and my coffee and all those other things, it's like all it takes is about 24 hours of realizing that you don't need those things. And suddenly there's a sense of freedom that I'm enjoying, actually. Even in my deprivation, I'm enjoying my freedom.
In the realm of dietary change, just given all your background and all the thousands of patients that you've seen, what is the one thing that we have to eliminate, either from what we eat or what we drink?
Obsession. I mean, no matter what the diet is, if a person is obsessed about it, it probably has more harm than anything in particular that they're eating. So, you know, the diet that I think in most situations is the most balanced is this Ayurvedic diet, which says it's not about what you don't eat. So if you're walking throughout the day saying, I'm not eating this, I'm not eating that, I'm not eating this, that ties you up in all these knots. But it's really about making certain that you have healthy choices from all these different categories. And then it's balanced. You know, the human species is the only species that has to read books or go to lectures or analyze the nutritional content of the food because we've so disconnected ourselves from our bodies. Koala bears don't need lessons on food, and pandas don't need it, and tigers don't need it. So what I find is that when people feel that their life is not in their control, when they've been diagnosed with a new illness, they often start focusing on their diet, which to a certain degree can be a good thing, but then when they start creating a sense of anxiety over it or ultra control, it actually ends up negating the benefits.
What are some changes that you would like to see happen in the world of health, medicine, healthcare? It's a broad question for a doctor.
Well, you know, I have an older son and then 2 young daughters, and I'd really like to see a world that deserves my children, which right now I don't really think it does deserve my children. And I think it's because the prevailing conversation for decades now has really been focusing on how people are different from each other. And I think the best thing we can do for our personal health, for our community health, for our world health is to change that conversation to what's that underlying unity. So that applies not only to how Homo sapiens treat each other, but I really think we have to recognize that we share this very delicate, beautiful spaceship, and we have to start treating other animals and the other members of our ecosystem with that similar level of reverence. And then I think there can be personal and planetary health.
What are some changes you would still like to try, initiate, have happen in your own life?
I'm working on and looking forward to manifesting conscious communities. You know, I think that community is something that a lot of people are really hungering for these days, and we're getting a taste of it through the internet, through online services, but the best we can hope for is two senses, sound and sight. I think that there's something really magical that happens when people committed to a path of well-being, of spirituality, of consciousness, get together, hang out together, do yoga together, meditate together, eat together. So that's what I'm looking forward to co-creating with a number of great people, these kind of conscious communities around the planet.
Talking about great people, who do you see as really being a change leader that's living today? That's someone who you really feel people either need to rally behind or support or engage with or read, or who do you see?
Well, I think we're seeing green sprouts in a lot of different places. I mean, the people that I engage with and find very nurturing and enthusiasm generating, the positive optimists that I think you mentioned, are people like my good friend and partner Deepak Chopra, Debbie Ford, one of the great shadow workers on the planet, Wayne Dyer, who I think has a way of framing this conversation in a vocabulary that reaches a very wide audience. Marianne Williamson is a good friend of mine and someone who I think is such a powerful model for women on this planet.
We've been lucky to have most of the people you just talked about on our show. So
yeah, these are great people, and a lot of people who aren't necessarily so much in the spotlight. I actually think Oprah is one of the foremost change catalysts in our society, and I think our president, is fortunately reflecting this collective conscious intention towards evolutionary change.
Just change that you'd like to see in the country?
Well, I feel compassion for the effects that this economic challenge is having on people's life. I hope that we'll use it to reevaluate, our choices, from this kind of consumptive mindset. The most common word that people use to describe Americans is consumers. And I think that what this setback is teaching us is that consumption doesn't make people happy, and it actually depletes our environment. So I'm hopeful that the next wave that comes out of these ashes is really a more authentic one, dedicated towards well-being, towards community, towards knowledge, towards understanding. So I hope that we're not just going to get back to, okay, let's all now make as much money as possible, get the biggest house and the next car, but really say, what are the important changes that we want to make for ourselves, and again, to create a planet that's worthy of our kids.
Thank you so much, David. What a pleasure.
My pleasure.
David's book is Free to Love, Free to Heal. His website is freetolove.com. Be sure to find out more about his beautiful work. Thank you.